Socialists opposed the war. One exception was the Jewish Daily Forward. The People, newspaper of the Socialist Party, called the issue of Cuban freedom a pretext and said the government wanted war to distract the attention of the workers from their real interests. The Appeal to Reason, another socialist newspaper, said the movement for war was a favorite method of rulers for keeping the people from redressing domestic wrongs. In the San Francisco Voice of Labor, a socialist wrote, "It is a terrible thing to think that the poor workers of this country should be sent to kill and wound the poor workers of Spain merely because a few leaders may incite them to do so." On May Day, 1898, the Socialist Labor Party organized an anti-war parade in New York City, but the authorities would not allow it to take place. While a May Day parade called by the Jewish Daily Forward urging Jewish workers to support the war was permitted. The Chicago Labor World said, "This has been a poor man's war, paid for by the poor man. The rich have profited by it, as they always do." The Spanish forces were defeated in 3 months in what John Hay, the American Secretary of State, later called a splendid little war. The American military pretended that the Cuban rebel army did not exist. When the Spanish surrendered, no Cuban was allowed to confer on the surrender or sign it. General William Schaefer said no armed rebels could enter the city of Santiago and told the Cuban rebel leader, General Calixto Garcia, that not Cubans but the old Spanish civil authorities would remain in charge of the municipal offices in Santiago. American historians have generally ignored the role of the Cuban rebels in the war. Can you imagine? You fight for your country's freedom against a colonial government, only for another colonial government to come intervene. You do all of this only for Spain and for the United States to agree on the terms of your supposed independence. The Lumbermen's Review, spokesman for the lumber industry, said in the midst of the war, "The moment Spain drops the reins of government in Cuba, the moment will arrive for American lumber interests to move into the island for the products of Cuban forests. Cuba still possesses 10 million acres of virgin forest abounding in valuable timber, nearly every foot of which would be saleable in the United States and bring high prices." Americans began taking over railroad, mine, and sugar properties when the war ended. In a few years, 30 million of the American capital was invested. United Fruit moved into the Cuban sugar industry. It bought 1.9 million acres of land for about 20 cents an acre. The American Tobacco Company arrived. By the end of the occupation in 1901, Foner estimates that at least 80% of the export of Cuba's minerals were in American hands, mostly by Bethlehem Steel. The United States did not annex Cuba, but a Cuban Constitutional Convention was told that the United States Army would not leave Cuba until the Platt Amendment, passed by Congress in February 1901, was incorporated into the new Cuban Constitution. This amendment gave the United States the right to intervene for the preservation of Cuban independence, the maintenance of government, adequate for the protection of life, property, and individual liberty. It also provided for the United States to get coaling or naval stations at certain specified points.